People often ask me, what's the best row on Magnum XL-200? I'm here at early entry for one reason and for one reason only. It's to ride every single row on Magnum XL-200 and rank them to find out which is the best row. You ready? Let's do it. As you probably guessed from my channel name, the original Hypercoaster is my favorite roller coaster, and I have accrued many laps on this fixture of the Cedar Point skyline over the years. Even 3.5 decades after its opening, Magnum remains an incredibly forceful and out-of-control experience. It's my legitimate choice for best ride in the park. But a lot of people disagree, and while I will continue to spread the gospel, I could understand that a negative Magnum experience could be colored by a less than ideal ride. What do I mean by a less than ideal ride? Well, the ride might have been running slow, it might have had a really rough seat, you might have been stapled by the restraints. There's so many factors that can influence a ride on Magnum, or any other roller coaster for that matter. And many of these factors are completely out of your control, but one important choice is entirely in your hands: where you sit in the train. So I get questions.
Is the back super rough?
Should I avoid sitting in a wheel seat? Is the magic seat as good as people say? What about the front row?
In the middle that has the secret sauce?
Alright, stop! Before this year, I almost always pointed people to the front row of the back car. I believe it offers the craziest ride experience without shaking your bones out. But in the lead up to my latest visit to Cedar Point, I was thinking about my upcoming Magnum rides, and I realized I don't actually know what the best row is because I haven't been on every single row. I mean, I probably have over the years, just like randomly, but I didn't really take notes on where each of my rides were and how I thought each row would compare to the others. And this train has 18 rows to pick from. So, being the academic that I am, I decided to run an experiment. I would ride Magnum in every single row, rank each ride on an element-by-element basis, and use the resultant data to scientifically determine the best row on Magnum. Maybe I would confirm my previous biases, maybe the vaunted magic seat would win out, or maybe I would find out I was wrong all along. Strap in tight, lower your lap bar but not too far, and pray those trims don't work, because today we're riding every row of Magnum XL-200. Welcome to Cedar Point, the coaster capital of the world. Oh, it's not open during early entry, oops. Okay, here we go. Rode Millie and Iron Dragon, and now we're back at the Magnum station. It's not open yet, but I'll be here when it starts, and I'm just gonna bum rush this entire thing. All right, we're in. Oh, right, also I should probably talk about the scoring system. Now, to be scientific about this, I needed to control for as many variables as I could. But it is impossible to control for absolutely everything, so I limited variability as much as possible. Firstly, I would do all these rides on the same day. This maintains consistency with weather and ensures that no overhaul to the trains or track would occur that could change how the ride is. I would attempt to do these rides as quickly as possible to mitigate the impact of the coaster warming up, and I'd also pick the same side of the train for each ride, which would eliminate the small but existent difference in forces that comes from seat selection. I picked the left side and was able to maintain this positioning for all but 2 of my cycles. I would not control for trains though. The 3 trains do ride differently, and it is theoretically possible to get every lap on the same train, but that's extremely difficult to plan for and would take up way more time. Time that would lead to the ride warming up more and skewing the data in a different way. With those rules established, I came up with a rubric for each element, ranking each row's individual experience from 1 to 5. The rubric had 8 categories: the first drop, the camelback going up, the camelback going down, the third hill, the turnaround, the tunnel hill, the 2 floater hills, and the finale. And the last few hills all ride pretty similarly, so I'm gonna lump them together. Now, my rankings for each category were also relative to the element itself. So 3 would be how the element usually feels, 1 would be like the worst experience I ever had in that specific element, etc., etc. I tried to be unbiased, but these rankings are inherently subjective, so please keep that in mind. Back to the video. Alright, so finished with the opening salvo, I did row 2, row 6, row 15, yeah, 15, and the whole back car. So like up at the front, middle-ish of the train, and then a bunch of rides towards the back. I'm surprised to say that I think row 6 was my favorite. Okay, row 2 was the first ride of the day, so that was definitely the slowest, but thankfully, like, the speed of the train is kind of being offset by the fact that the trains are just running empty now, so while the ride's warming up, like, the trains are empty, so it kind of stays the same speed. The back? I mean, the back is better when the ride's more warmed up, which I'm convinced about, because I was kind of, like, a little unimpressed with the triangle hills in the back. I still think the last row, row 18, has, like, a secret sauce that the other rows in the back car don't have, even though it is very rough. But I think it's still worth doing. By the way, it's on Black Train. It's running rough this year. Oh boy. Oh, I forgot to mention, I tracked one more thing along with my 8 categories, the roughness. I won't deny it, Magnum can be a bit bumpy. And it doesn't really bother me at all because it's not painful, but I know there are wusses out there who shed a tear at the sight of a slight rattle, so if you're curious to know what the most comfortable row is, I gotcha. The roughness will only account for the forces and how the ride tracks, and not the impact and the restraints on your body, because if you get stapled on the triangle hills, I'm sorry, buddy. That's on you. Okay, second little salvo, row 1, the front, row 6, and row 10. Row 1 was a very solid ride. I mean, yeah, obviously the view is nice, but the hills at the end in row 1 are great. As good as the Magic Seat, if not, like, even better. I'm shocked to see how much I'm liking the middle rows. Row 10 wasn't as good as, like, row 7 from before, but it was still a lot of fun. Row 6 was also great. Honestly, it's getting pretty difficult to keep track of all this. Oh my god. Okay, I'm circling around for the first time. The good news is it's still a walk-on, and I've got like 6 rides through already, so let's hope it stays a walk-on. I'm gonna go for the front because I feel like this is the time to do it, because there's gonna be more of a line there. So, Magic Seat, row 3, in case you were curious, and row 4. Actually,
Before we continue, bad news. Helen Schilke, founding member of the newly reborn DIN Corporation, is in talks with both Claude Mabillard and Dan Snyder to overhaul Magnum using B&M track. My sources indicate the resultant retrack will eliminate 86.7% of the available airtime and somehow make the ride more uncomfortably shaky than it is right now. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and please offer assistance with the new hype feature to fund the handcuffs I need to forcibly chain myself to the ride and prevent this retrack from happening. Thank you.
little underwhelmed by the Magic Seat. I don't know, people always say it's the best for the Triangle Hills, but it was very rough. That's TT2 going by. It was very rough. The first half wasn't that great, except for the ejector hill. The third hill was nuts. However, row 4 I think is just slightly better in every way. It's also way less rough, so ride row 4 instead of row 3. It's like Magic Seat, but better. All right, let's keep going. Row 13, a little bit of a disappointment, not gonna lie. I usually like it by the back, but something about row 13 just wasn't hitting. Oh well. I just rode row 14 with Uncle Nate, and it was a solid row. Definite improvement from row 13, smoother, but somehow also felt more forceful. I mean, obviously there's other variables going on, like the train's warming up. I might have been on red or black train. I'm honestly losing track of that, but we're almost there, past the halfway point. Okay, 2 rides on row 9 and row 12. And damn,
somehow those are the best rows I've been. I could not believe how much I liked row 9 and row 12, but like the triangle hills in row 9 were crazy. It's just like so consistent in the middle, and I was not expecting that coming in because I just always skip the middle. It's been about an hour and a half since the ride opened. Thankfully, it's still a walk-on. I don't know what I would do if I had to like wait online each time, because damn, that would be rough. But I only have 3 rows left, which is pretty impressive. One more to go. Let's go. Did row 5 and row 8. Row 8 was weirdly cheeks. Even though row 9 was great, row 8 kind of sucked. I don't get it. Row 5, pretty solid. Like, you're getting further away from the magic seat, but I don't know, that final run is still nutso. All I have left is row 11, and then we're done. So let's hit it. Last ride. She's calling my name.
On board the train.
Row 11. Let's go.
We're done! I did it! Let's go!
Row 11 was kind of cheeks, actually, but I don't know, I think the middle of the car is just generally weaker, but that's it. Every single goddamn row on Magnum. It didn't even take that long. Fun way to spend a couple hours. So obviously I've not processed the data yet. I mean, I have it like all on my phone, but I'm not gonna do data analysis while I'm at Cedar Point. My initial impressions, middle of the car, I don't enjoy. Even if it is the smoothest, I think the front of the car has a little more oomph to it, while still not being super rough. I mean, the back of each car is pretty rough, so you do have to deal with that. I'm shocked at how much I like the middle. The middle rows, like row 9, row 12, some of my favorite rows on the ride. The front, the very front row, I think, is better than the magic seat. And the back rows are kind of when the car is not warmed up. But when it does warm up, it is really fun in the back. Obviously, I did this like right at the beginning of the day, so if I were to come back here later, I would probably head towards the back, but bro, I'm tired. I'm really tired. So I'm gonna take a break. Well, that was fun and all, but now for the important part, the math. Back to the studio.
Dr. XL-200 here, and who's ready to read some data? I know I am. But first off, let's look at some overall numbers. I got 20 rides on Magnum in total, 2 Thursday night rides and 18 rides that Friday morning. I didn't count those 2 Thursday rides in my data, but I used them as a sort of benchmark to judge my future rides, and like, I just wanted to get night rides on Magnum, okay? Blue Train was down for the duration of the visit, leaving only red and black. I say I got, like, black 70% of the time, which is the fastest train, but it is also the roughest. It's the only one that hasn't been overhauled yet, if I understand correctly. I didn't track the trains exactly, because it was getting a bit overwhelming trying to keep all these rankings straight in my head. All rides except for 2 were in the left seat, and honestly the seat barely makes a difference, so just don't worry about it. And, unfortunately, I did not get a single trimless ride. Damn! Anyways, let's get to the results. Here it is, the moment you've all been waiting for. Behold, my data. Any questions? Yeah, what the hell does any of this mean? Alright, good point. We need to break this down into something a bit less esoteric and more palatable. I agonized about how to present this data for a bit, and what I decided to do was make a mock-up of the train on Planet Coaster 2 and cut that out to use as a visual reference. Now I can point out the specific row I'm talking about as we go through the rankings. Sounds good? Let's do it. In last place, with an average score of 2.65 out of 5, we have a tie. Row 8 and row 11, come up and get your lump of coal. I'm not too surprised here. Row 8 and 11 are the middle rows of the two middle cars, and so they sit very close to the center of mass. They benefit the least from the added whip and momentum you get when you sit closer to the front or the back of the train. I would have predicted this result coming in. Next up, with a score of 2.94 out of 5, we have row 6, row 13, and row 15. Row 6 makes sense to me. It's stuck kind of close to the middle, a little too far from the magic seat, and it's a wheel seat, so it's a pretty bumpy experience. But the second to back car disappoints with a rather weak showing. That's something I would not have guessed coming in. Given my previously stated preference for the back car, one would figure that the car directly in front of it would offer a somewhat similar experience. It didn't. And speaking of the magic seat, next up we have row 3, tied with row 14 for third to last. Wait, what? Doesn't everyone say that the magic seat is the craziest row on the ride? Well, my supremely objective data does not necessarily back up this claim. Yes, it scores well through the finale, but it's not the best row in the train for the triangles, at least in my mind. And you give up a lot on that first drop in Camelback, as you're getting beaten to submission in a wheel seat. Honestly, I always found the magic seat to be a bit overrated, unless the train is absolutely flying like on a trimless ride. But even then, the back rows are just as crazy in a different way. Happy to see the data backs up my previously held prejudice with a middling score of 3.53 out of 5. Row 14 is a slight step up from the other weak performers in the second to back car, not much new to say there. Next, with a score of 3.82 out of 5, we have the magic seat's neighbors, row 4 and row 5. We've reached the middle of the pack here, and these rows are solid. I think 4 and 5 are just like slightly better versions of the magic seat experience. You get 95% of the airtime with 25 to 50% of the roughness. So give row 4 a try. I'd prefer it over row 5, because row 5 is a little smoother, but row 4 is a little punchier. Also, row 7's here. A middle car front row. Not too surprising. It's decent. Moving into the next echelon, we hit 17, the second to back row and a former favorite of mine. It scores decently well, but honestly, I'm a bit surprised that it didn't rank higher. If I had to guess, based on my own logic though, it's because it's lacking the bite of some of the other rows in the back car. More on that later. And I mean, we're in the top half now. It's still a great row all around. I just think the rows above it are a little bit better. We then hit the other two rows in the back car, tied with row 2 and taking 5th, 6th, and 7th place. Oh, that's a poorer performance than I was expecting. Now, row 2 is certainly a worthy candidate for this good but not great ranking. It's not the front row, but it offers similar forces, and it gives a much smoother ride than the magic seat while still delivering a punchy finale. But I was assuming that the back car would score a lot higher. Like honestly, coming into this whole experiment, I thought row 16 was going to come out on top. But the data don't lie. So what the hell beat it? Tied for the last podium position, we have row 10 and row 12. What? The first and third rows of the fourth car were completely off my radar coming in, so what gives? What makes the center of the train a better place to be than the back? Well, there are 2 more rows to go, so maybe let's take a look at the next 2, and this mid-train aberration might make a little bit more sense. And now, raising up the trophy, the best row on Magnum XL-200. Drum roll, please. It's row 1. The very front. An entirely sensible choice. Wait, what? I missed one? What do you mean? Row 9? Yeah. Row 9, a row I had not given the time of day in previous visits. A row in the absolute dead middle of the train. What the fuck? Okay, I'll stop joking around for a second. I was shocked by this result at first, but after much reflection, I stand by my data. I kinda love row 9. It just has some secret sauce that really makes it pop in my opinion. The back of the car positioning gives a surprisingly decent-ish pop over both the first drop and the initial Camelback, and the third hill is absolutely nuts in the middle of the train. The highlight of the ride in row 9 is the return run. Row 9 manages to pop you out of your seat with the ferocity that rivals the experience in the magic seat. Honestly, I thought it was a bit better than the Magic Seat. And with the third best variance of just 0.7, row 9 is rather consistent throughout. More on this variance thing later. I think I found myself a bit of a hidden gem. Let's not ignore our other winner though, row 1, which is a lot less shocking but still deserving of praise. If you're looking for a Magic Seat style experience, then the very front of the train is the place to be. The first drop gives what is easily the best experience in the front half of the train, leaving you hanging in anticipation looking over the track with a dive coaster-esque crawl over the crest. The camelback going up throws you out of your seat as you're pushed through the element, and the third hill is absolutely wild up front. While there are a few rows that are a little bit better in the finale, row 1 is more than satisfying, and plus you get a great sense of speed as the wind blows through your face, along with an unrivaled view. And it is pretty smooth to boot. I wouldn't call it totally smooth, but it's certainly smoother than the rows in the back of the train, or the back of the car, TBH. So there you have it. And now you can see what it all looks like plotted out. Row 1 and row 9, the best two rows on Magnum XL-200. This is not what I expected, but that was the main reason I did this experiment. To find out some sleeper rows that I could keep in mind for future rides on my favorite coaster. But if you think I'm done here, hoo boy, buckle up. I still have the talking pillow. There is one big caveat about the dataset I just showed you. That set accounts for the roughness as part of the overall score. So what if, like me, you aren't a pansy and don't mind getting roughed up a little bit? Well, things change in the graph. Once again, row 11's bringing up the rear, followed closely by row 8. And as one would expect, the wheel seats such as the Magic Seat, row 6, row 12, and row 15 get a bit of a bump when you don't worry about being shaken around, while the smoother middle car rows suffer in comparison. This wheel seat bump is in fact significant enough to move the very last row, one of my former preferred choices, all the way up into second place, which I'm more than happy about. The back of Magnum is not for the faint of heart, but if you can handle what this coaster dishes out, the resultant experience is more than worth it. Speaking of pain, why don't we have a look at the roughness rankings for each row? Whoa, shock! The wheel seats are the least comfortable, and the middle of each car is the most comfortable, at least in general. Wow, truly surprising stuff, I know. It isn't a one-to-one relationship though. The middle car wheel seats were smoother than the outer wheel seats, which I think makes sense, and the front of the train was a bit more merciful in the back. Again, I did have to do this experiment on two separate trains, so that can be a factor. I'm digressing. Where was I? Right. Not accounting for roughness, the overall winner, once again, is row 9. Ignoring roughness vaults this wheel seat even higher in the rankings, giving it an outright victory. And that's crazy. But okay, it's just a really solid row, don't sleep on it. Now, with this data, you may have noticed something interesting. Row 9, the supposed best row on the train, happens to be directly next to row 8, which finished both last and second to last. And that's quite the discrepancy. I thought about this for a while and noticed a similarly poor performance from row 11, which was the other middle car middle seat row, even though it's surrounded by row 10 and row 12, which both perform pretty well. Why is that? Here's my theory. It comes down to the way the trains are designed. The Magnum trains have their wheels under the front row of each car and the rear row of each car, and that makes the front rows and the rear rows of each car the pivot points. And due to the tangent radius design of Magnum's hills, Magnum does not smoothly flow between elements. The transition is abrupt, like going over a bump in your car. And thus, as Magnum flies over each of its legendary camelbacks, the upstops slam into the track abruptly, and the resultant jerk tosses you out of your seat. Now that's a big contributor to Magnum's chaotic airtime, but if you're sitting in the middle of a car, away from the wheels, this impact is dampened as the lever effect makes the punchy airtime you feel far less impactful. It's like, you know when you were a kid, and you always sat in the back of the bus because you thought that you were cool, and you were actually just a weird budding adrenaline junkie you like being tossed around every time you went over a bump? Well, what happened if you sat in the middle of the bus and went over that same bump? It was a lot less exciting, right? I rest my case. My theory's backed up by the data here. I sorted each row of Magnum into 3 groups, lumping together the front car rows, middle car rows, and back of the car rows, and found the average value from each group to determine if this supposed middle row slump is something real. And the middle rows do disappoint with an average score of only 3.09. Meanwhile, the front row seats averaged 3.77, and the back row wheel seats cleared the field with an average score of 4.07. The middle seats are better in smoothness, but the wheel seats are worth the pain, trust me. By the way, if you're curious why the hills on Magnum are so violent and what makes its air times so unique compared to other hypers, I have a whole video discussing tangent radius design and how it impacts Magnum, so definitely check that out. Once we're done here. We're almost done, I promise. I'm gonna use the data set that doesn't account for roughness moving forward now, because we've evaluated the roughness independently, and I honestly think you should just suck it up. But let's keep going. Next on the docket, how consistent are each of the rows from element to element? I determined this by calculating the variance of the full data set from each row and using error bars to provide a visual reference on our plot. If you're not statistically inclined, this may look a bit confusing at first glance, but it's pretty simple. The shorter the bar is, the more consistent the data is, and vice versa. If the bar is really long, that means that a row probably has a lot of good moments which are balanced out by a number of bad moments. If the bar is short, almost every element delivers, assuming the score itself is good, which is a big assumption. The most consistent row is row 18, the very back, which makes it not only one of the best rows overall, but the most consistently good row on an element-by-element basis. That is, of course, if you can handle the roughness. Compare that to row 2 and row 17, which exhibit the greatest variance. Row 17's camelback up is an absolute limp noodle, while row 2's furious finale is dragged down by a pretty weak first half. That middle of the car effect strikes again, I guess. In general, the front rows exhibit more variance when compared to the back rows, which is probably due to the weaker first half that stems from missing that full brunt of the first drop. Is this teaching you guys anything about statistics? Finally, I'm going to break down the ride element by element, because we can. I have the data. How does each element ride in each row? Well, take a look here. This chart probably looks like a whole load of gibberish, so I split out each element individually for ease of viewing. Let's do it. We start with the first drop. Unsurprisingly, the 195-foot tall plunge gets better the further back you are on the train. With the exception of the front row, which does have a fun first drop, but for different reasons. It's the same story for the drop off of the very tall camelback. Hot take alert, big drops are better in the back rows. You're welcome. I know some people don't like the shimmy coming out of the camelback that gets downright violent in the back, but I do, so your mileage may vary. Conversely, the front seats take the W when rising up into the camelback, but there's a bit more variance here as the wheel seats, basically wherever you are in the train, give a nice little pop of air when transitioning into the crest. It all makes sense to me so far. The legendary third hill scores well basically everywhere, and slightly better up front. No surprise, that hill is absolutely incredible. Now the turnaround is the turnaround, and so there isn't much variability. Only the very front and back really get much benefit of being whipped around through the turnaround, and the wheel seats score lower because the roughness really becomes apparent in this section. And then we have the tunnel hill, which is usually pretty meh, but a bit more solid in the wheel seats, especially row 12 for some reason. Good on you, row 12. Now, for what you're probably the most excited for, the floater hills. LOL JK, but they do follow a pretty similar trend to the previous tunnel hill. Now we'll get to the finale, which moves up and down quite a bit. I expected the front of the train, specifically the magic seat, to score very well here, and it does, but I didn't expect rows 6 and 9 to be even better, but it is. Those middle of the train wheel seats just have the sauce, IDK, what to say. I'm not surprised to see poor row 8 and the rows towards the back of the train slacking a bit, but the very back row does redeem itself with just that little bit of extra ferocity. Shout out. Okay, I say that's thorough enough, yeah? No. Nah. I want to find out one more thing while we have our data. Is there any sort of trend to the data set, or is the quality of a specific row just completely independent? If we fit our score data to a regression equation, we find a very weak but somewhat present inverse parabolic correlation between the position of the train and the overall score, with an R-squared value of less than 0.2. I know that sounds like a bunch of gibberish if you haven't taken statistics, so here, just look at the plot. It makes sense, right? You see that line? That's the line of fit regression. Now, I wouldn't hang a thesis on these numbers, but the weak correlation line is enough to show that in general, the front rows and the back rows score a little bit higher. thank you, data, for supporting my previous statements on the superiority of the back row. Still, there is a lot of variance in this dataset, and row 9 is a serious outlier, so let's not get too caught up in data trends and all that and lose sight of the whole picture. The truth is, no matter where you sit on Magnum XL-200, you're going to have a good time. Magnum is an absolutely incredible and super fun roller coaster, and every single row, at least to me, is an absolute blast. My goal with this experiment was not to demean any specific rows, but to uncover some hidden gems inside the rows less traveled, and I think I have. While many of my previous go-tos did perform pretty well and the data supported my somewhat lukewarm opinions on the Magic Seat, there were some rows that I completely ignored in the past which surprised me in the best possible way. After riding every goddamn row on Magnum XL-200 in one single day, I feel confident in saying that the very best row, the ultimate Magnum experience, is a wheel seat in the dead middle of the train. And on that bombshell, good night.